Hello everyone, welcome back to Enterprise Architecture Live. I'm very excited about our next speaker, coming directly from Germany to the world today. We would like to welcome Dr. Ulrich Kalex. Dr. Ulrich is the Senior Vice President of Product Line Management and R&D at Software AG. In this capacity, he's responsible for product strategy, the product roadmap, and the execution and development of the Alphabet product. Under Dr. Kalex's leadership, Software AG, which was previously Alphabet AG, has contributed significantly to defining and shaping the market for enterprise architecture, strategic IT planning, and portfolio management. Since the Alphabet product's introduction to the market as a standard software platform, it has year upon year been recognized as a leader in analyst reports such as the Gartner Magic Quadrant and Forrester Wave. Dr. Ulrich, it's a real pleasure and honor to have you here, and very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jose. Thanks everyone for joining the session here today. And let me start sharing my screen. I will today be talking about the Scaled Agile and how Scaled Agile can help organizations improve their ability to embrace the opportunity of digital business, and how this is related to strategic portfolio management and enterprise architecture management. So with this, let me get started on my slides here. First, let's familiarize ourselves a little bit with why this is a topic of relevance here. We all know digital business, and the relevance of digital business is increasing by the minute. This quote from George Westerman from MIT Sloan is actually highlighting that what this is all about isn't just executing, but it is really transforming the enterprise. I want to further justify this with a couple of data points to share here. One is looking at organizations and their ability to embrace the opportunity of digital, as explained here with its digital intensity, and two, looking at organizations' ability to transform themselves in the transformation management intensity. This again is from George Westerman's chair at MIT Sloan. And what these folks have found out is that the people that they call digerati, the ones that can excel along picking up digital opportunities as well as being successful in transforming themselves, are winning out on all accounts. And to this, we are looking at the same portfolio quadrant here with a number of data points indicating performance of organizations vis-a-vis their positioning along those two axes of digital intensity and transformation management intensity. And what is striking is that the ones that are in this digerati quadrant are really winning on all counts. They're winning in revenue generation, they're winning in profitability, they're winning in market valuation. And that means that obviously everybody is looking into becoming a digerati, improving on the ability to identify digital opportunities and then transform the enterprise, transform the organization to take advantage of the digital opportunity that has been identified. And what is very important in the context of our conversation today is that it is Agile that helps organizations becoming successful in this. And when we look at Agile, we can clearly see on this next slide here that we have.
I'm a registered member of the BACP now.
That we have many organizations that are aspiring to improve on their agile capabilities, and we also see that organizations are improving, or I'm getting some background noise here. Somebody from the panelists, can you please turn off? We're also seeing that the fortune of organizations is very much related to the ability to transform themselves. And we can see this in this chart with the S&P 500 index, showcasing how the lifetime of organizations, of enterprises in that S&P 500 index has shrunk by 50% over the course of the last 50 years, which is an indicative for the acceleration of transformation that is critical to nearly all of industries. So everybody, of course, has heard about Agile, and we will all know that Agile is closely related to working software, to customer collaboration, to rapid response to change. And on that backdrop, one could ask the question, so why exactly do we need to talk about it? What is the role that governance has to play in this? So looking at this, we can see that there's a number of desired benefits associated with Agile, spirit of entrepreneurialism, or the ability to respond to challenges in flight, or the focus on customer outcomes, the speed to market. These are all positive connotations associated with Agile, and many organizations have demonstrated to themselves and the leadership that Agile is making that difference. But on the flip side, organizations that have taken Agile too much on an operational basis have learned that Agile comes with consequences that are undesired. Insufficient asset governance, strategic cohesion lacking, or a sprawl of infrastructure, because all of these Agile teams are basically self-supportive, autonomous in making the requests for assets, for infrastructure, for software as they see necessary. So what is probably required is finding the right balance between those two and coming to a type of lean governance here. And that's what I will be focusing on with the next few slides. So Agile is an imperative for digital business success. I think we have seen this on the slides from MIT Sloan. Here is a quote from Forrester, and I'm sure you will be able to find this yourself, underpinning the importance of portfolio management in successfully taking Agile to an enterprise scale. So now we want to try to learn for ourselves, what does this mean specifically? What are the capabilities organizations need to embrace, need to adopt, need to become excellent with in order to take Agile to an enterprise scale? The first one I want to talk about is business strategy planning. It is all focused on, are we executing on our digital business strategy? And when we look at this, there's a number of aspects and facets that come into play here. I don't have time to dwell into each and every single one of them, so I want to highlight a few. Business capability management. How do we know which business capabilities need changing or need to be introduced altogether in support of the business strategy that we have? How do we know that these business capabilities are there in the right quality, are being adopted throughout the organization? And secondly is what we call business IT synchronization. So how do we know what digital products and services do we need? Do we need to further develop, transform, introduce? Which digital products and services do we need to attain outcomes as defined in our business strategy? And the result of this business strategic planning now need to go into the day-to-day works of the Agile development teams. And you can see by the visual that I'm using here on my slide that, of course, these are very many. There are organizations that may have hundreds of Agile teams operating on their specific products and services. So taking Agile to an enterprise scale is also about managing the challenge of orchestration across these many different Agile teams. Moving on to the capability number 2, which is strategic portfolio management. So here we are looking at finding answers to the question of, are we investing in the right digital products and services? And we are looking at this, of course, as a follow-on to the digital business strategic planning. So we are trying to understand, are we in alignment with the strategy, with the portfolio as we have it? Are we knowing, do we know which parts of the portfolio contribute to attainment of strategy? Do we understand the impacts of changes along the architecture? Can we identify the Agile budgets that are necessary and live within the constraints that these Agile budgets inevitably will come with? Moving on to capability number 3. The third capability we call lean portfolio management. See the subtle difference. While previously we had talked about strategic portfolio management, now we are talking about lean portfolio management. And that means we are looking to find answers to, are we managing our digital portfolio effectively? Here we are talking about 3 different players coming together. The first one we call enterprise teams. These enterprise teams are focusing or gravitating to balancing strategic themes with the long-term outcomes that we are hoping to attain. Secondly, we are talking about portfolio teams. And portfolio teams focus on balancing the funnel of epics with the product delivery and the strategic theme outcomes. So if the enterprise team has decided these are the strategic themes we should be making investment into, and here is the money that we are dispositioning to the different strategic themes, allocating to the different strategic themes, then the portfolio teams, they will look into, okay, given that these are the constraints we are maneuvering within for a specific strategic theme, what are our best bets of change to make the direction of the strategic theme a reality? And then last but not least, we are talking about product teams. And the product teams are the ones that are now close to the hip with the Agile teams, the Scrum teams. Those are the teams that focus on what are those features, what are the changes that we should bring into our products and services that meet the needs of change, that allow us to leverage the capacity, the talent that we have available in our product team to the best of possibilities to attain the ask from the portfolio team. Moving on to capability number 4. Capability number 4 is at the heart of that orchestration challenge I was speaking about, mentioning a couple of slides ago. Know what, where, when, and who of change. We have so many different moving parts in our organizations, given the complexity of the organizations that we have to come to deal with, that it is very important to have the right communication in place for the change. And we call this road mapping. And the roadmaps are synchronizing the interconnected portfolios. And roadmaps are galore. And of course, we are not talking about 3 individual portfolios, but we are talking about 3 categories of portfolios here. So a business strategy portfolio, because there are many different business strategies, an IT change portfolio, because there's so much of change happening all the time, and an IT asset portfolio, because we have already come to a situation where we have hundreds, if not even thousands, of IT assets to take care of. These portfolios articulate their change individually through a roadmap, and these roadmaps are communicating to one another. Coming to capability number 5. Capability number 5 is picking up on the right agile scaling framework. You aren't the first organizations to go through this, and you are able to follow a well-established experience in the market to be successful with this. So I'm picking here SAFe, but there are other frameworks equally popular and available. Spotify, less, just to mention another couple of examples. What is important is that these frameworks are connecting the Agile release train continuous delivery pipeline at the core with the strategic portfolio management, the strategic planning conversation, and provide for the right connections. So here we are talking about organizational agility. How do we understand how this organization need to embrace the opportunity? Here we are finding back the lean portfolio management I mentioned earlier, the agile product delivery, and we are also finding the strategic themes, the portfolio vision, the lean budgets, the portfolio backlog. And of course, along this, we see the epics falling into place to delivering on the business outcome KPIs that we have identified. So important as a capability for your organization is identifying the right agile framework, picking up on the operating model that the organization has, and adopting that framework to your own needs. Because these frameworks aren't just cookie cutter methods. These frameworks need to be lived by in a complexly set up organization, And that means you need to juxtapose it, you need to cross it with the operating model that you have come to live with for probably a decade or more of time. So that means a capability that you will require is the ability to configure your road to Agile to the specifics of your organization. Moving on to the next capability. This next capability is making sure you are bringing all the information that you possibly have into the context of your Agile enterprise conversation. So we call this the integration with the SPM ecosystem. You are aspiring to having an always-on 360-degree information hub for Agile decision-making. And the facets, the aspects of information collaboration are phenomenal. We are talking about so many different elements and pieces here. Let me just pick a few. Model to execute, execute to model. This is all the estate of solutions that you have in place that automate processes, that facilitate integration in your landscape, that monitor the execution of electronic processes like a Dynatrace, for instance, or that help you articulating what are those processes in the first place, whether automated or not, as would typically be done in a business process analysis solution, such as ARIS, for instance. Then we are talking about risk and compliance, because risk and compliance gives you a good understanding of what are the constraints, what are the boundaries of maneuvering that are available to you, to your organization, and how they have to be reflected in those new digital products and services that you may want to build. Picking up on the IT service management layer, because this is the place where you have the best of understanding about the incumbent IT. What all is contributing to a specific service that IT is delivering to the business, and how are these pieces coming together, and where are your incidents, and how can you translate incidents that are articulated on a fairly low infrastructure level in a way that would be consumable by business decision makers. And then, of course, we talk about budgets and cost, because everything, of course, is under the premise that it can be afforded by the enterprise that we have. So all these pieces need to come together. And Alphabet is providing you this single pane of glass that allows you to have all this information work to the benefits of you and your organization advancing in the Agile enterprise journey. Moving on to the business capability of enterprise architecture. The business capability of enterprise architecture is your point of gravity. And presumably some of you will know that picture. It shows the Foucault pendulum as on display in Paris. And I have chosen this picture for a purpose, because much like this pendulum of Foucault is pointing to the gravity, to the center of gravity, your enterprise architecture will have that ability to inform Agile product management and product architecture. But you need to set it up for that. And setting it up for that means you need to embrace enterprise architecture as an agile architecture itself. So gone are the days where enterprise architects can spend months and months coming up with proposed architecture solutions. So the architecture itself is a topic of evolution, is in motion, and you will only be knowing and only be able to articulate so much at every juncture in the process. Secondly, you will be supporting, as enterprise architects, the definition of the products and services. That means the architecture itself is that definition. And when I say this is the definition, it means you are delineating where the boundaries are between those different products and services. And with this in place, you can help application portfolio management to come to an optimized and agile IT. That means anytime and all the time you will be helping the application portfolio leadership to understand and take decision as to where you need to change strategy for your application portfolios. This often is related to business capabilities. So you will identify business capabilities that need changing. Remember, starting from the strategy of your organization. So those business capabilities that need changing, they will inform you as to whether or not you should look into expanding the portfolio of products and applications, or whether you should be contracting that portfolio of products and applications, supporting, enabling, automating a business capability. And then lastly, the business capabilities are the heart and centerpiece of the business architecture. They will be used to driving business decision making. They will be used to identifying the digital products and services that you should be aiming for, and that you might need to complement the existing estate. They will also be informing you about products and services that need enhancements. And when I say products and services, you need to understand that this includes also the likes of APIs or microservices as ways of interaction with in the portfolio, within the landscape that you have, or into the ecosystem of the partners that you're dealing with. They also provide you with the ability to evaluate your own position vis-a-vis competitors. And I think that's something that many organizations still have an opportunity to improve on, because you can identify easily what are those capabilities that your competitors are strong at, maybe stronger than yourselves. And you can help business identifying as to whether or not this is okay, because organizations are different, or as to whether or not it is a gap that needs closing. And then once you identify it's a gap that needs closing, you will probably define a business strategy that drives closing this gap vis-a-vis your competitors. You will understand how to measure the attainment of this strategy. You will be able to actually start measuring this in your organization so as to setting yourself up for a successful transformation along that business strategy. So on concluding to this, let's take a look at strategic portfolio management again. And let's juxtapose it with agile development again. At the beginning, I had started explaining how many organizations have taken a very operational view at agile development. They have taken the benefits of agile development, such as the ability to collaborate with customers, the ability to make changes in flight, the ability to improve time to market. And they have done this in a fairly focused but siloed fashion. We are now complementing this with strategic portfolio management, and I hope that you agree with me that as a result, we are actually seeing strategic portfolio management not at all at odds with agile development. And here are a couple of reasons why strategic portfolio management can be and should be the backbone of your agile development practice. Firstly, strategic portfolio management will help you improve collaboration and decision making. It will give the agile teams the ability to coordinate amongst themselves across different agile teams, so as to understanding what direction of change they all need to respond to vis-a-vis the strategy of the organization. It also helps coming to a common vocabulary, which in turn will help supporting collaboration. And you are in possession of a central repository of systems, of glossaries, of nomenclature, of requirements, of strategies, of capabilities. All these great things are available to the entire community that is working on agile development. Secondly, it will help you furthering the speed to market. It will help the agile teams to improve their speed to market even further, because they are able to fully examine the operating deployment. They will lower the risk of disruption as they prepare for releases and go-lives. It will help them to get a better understanding of the as-is environment that they are going to live in, they are going to cooperate with inevitably with the releases that they're bringing out. And it will thus help them identifying interdependencies and potential problems much earlier than today. And the third one is one that is very timely indeed, because we all know about the cybersecurity risks, the risks of incidents and outages, and the consequences that those have to the realities of business life that is increasingly dependent on well-functioning digital products and services. So Agile Enterprise helps the agile development teams to anticipate what is coming down the pipe, anticipate new policies and regulations, anticipate and respond to changes in strategy in response to, for instance, regulatory changes, as well as understanding how the interplay of multiple products and services changes the lay of the land to the digital facade of the enterprise. So with this, I have completed my session here, and I think Jose would be good if you were to come back on.
Dr. Ulrich, thank you so much for a great presentation. Very, very interesting approaches on strategic project management and its interface with Agile. So there are a few questions that have come up during your talk, and I'll relay them to you. The first one here is from someone who is in a high volume manufacturing setting. They describe their organization as about a $3 billion high volume manufacturer, and they have, you know, as you alluded during your presentation, they have a number of teams working on digital innovation areas in the company, and but there's also an opportunity to reset, if you will, and as you discussed strategic portfolio management, what would be the right sequence of events, if you will, on if we had an opportunity to pause and restructure things and start the right way again, restart the right way, how would you advise someone who is looking at developing more of a strategic portfolio management approach, if you will, to do that? What would be the first initial steps to get that done?
Sure. Okay, I think there are probably two principal inroads to this, and I would want to call them top down and bottom up, without necessarily giving any indication of superiority or inferiority here. The top down approach we could also talk about as a strategy-led approach. So an organization that has an important strategic direction to execute on would be in a perfect position to taking this as the launch pad into Agile Enterprise. Because such a strategic transformation will often come with a series of initiatives that will ultimately be executed by a distributed to be orchestrated set of teams. The second approach would be starting from the existing practice of Agile development. So if you have 10, 15, 20 teams that are currently working on digital products and services fairly independently for most of cases, you can help them coming together and finding the right mode of collaboration and interoperation by giving them that additional layer of synchronization in helping them understand what are the capabilities that we are contributing to with our products and services, and how are those related, and how are those subject to policies, regulations, constraints of using data and sharing data, constraints of storing data or moving data, etc. And soon these teams will be understanding the benefits that they will be able to gain and get from having these early warnings that tell them the feature that we believe we would be working on next week isn't actually all that necessary any longer because of that change in policy that is coming down the pipe.
Very good, very helpful. So the next question has to do more about the state of development and on the strategic on SPM. If you look back at the last 12 months or so, as you work with clients worldwide, what would you consider to be maybe a trends that you have observed, or most important developments that you have observed related to SPM in those organizations?
Interesting question. So the first observation we are making is that this is a topic that is kind of trending hot. It's starting to gain attention, specifically on leadership level. So the likes of head of transformation, of course, the CIO, the chief digital. Those are roles that look at scaling Agile to the enterprise level because they have heard so great stories about it, and they aren't necessarily the ones that would go and execute them, but they are looking to get support from their organizations in making this a reality. Secondly, it is still far from being a mainstream topic. So we are still kind of in the phase of gaining experience, getting more familiar with this, establishing our organizations. So obviously, organizations have gotten more and more creative in implementing their specific way of Agile enterprise. And we as an organization, Software AG as an organization, is helping our clients in finding the right way of adopting this in their organization. Because of course, organizational constraints, complexities are something we can't neglect here. So these are probably the two most important trends.
Very good, very good. Joseph Lackey has a real practitioner question here, Dr. Ulrich, that you can help us with. He says that it's really difficult to manage software corporate vision. And then with that, he asks, how do you drive changes with bigger software companies that degraded their capabilities with bad PM decisions that affected end user usability of their legacy products with the new developed releases? The new releases lost functionality and capabilities for fluff features. So again, I'll repeat the question, is that how do you drive changes with bigger software companies that degraded their capabilities with bad PM decisions that affected end user usability of their legacy products because they released new products that really were not very useful?
Interesting question. Now, this is probably where the interplay between the three teams that I had articulated in one of the capabilities that are crucial here, the lean portfolio management, comes into play. Firstly, you need to have a strategic direction. If you cannot articulate the strategic themes that are relevant for you, if you cannot measure how these strategic themes are being delivered against, which means it starts with, if you do not measure, you are outright flat failing anyhow. It doesn't matter. Secondly, you need to have those portfolio teams. Portfolio teams are not tied to a product. They are finding the right balance of feeding epics to the products. Epics are coarse-grained articulations of requirements. They are not down in the weeds, and hence they are less likely to cause frustration with existing customers about things being removed and fluff being introduced in replacement. Again, it is important that you have metrics and measures to know whether you are moving the needle into the right direction. And what we find is many organizations are shying away or taking not seriously that topic of identifying the right metrics and measures. What those organizations do is they just focus blindly and solely on the third of the teams, which is important, nothing against, but it's not the only team that exists. It's one of three types of teams. And if you are not giving attention, if you're not providing decision-making support and budget to the other two, don't be surprised that you end up in a situation that is less desirable and probably introducing unnecessary complexity.
Dr. Ulrich, that was an excellent answer. Thank you for that. That really provides a full picture. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with a global audience today. It's a real honor and privilege to have you with us.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining the conversation today. I wish you best of luck and be happy to continue conversation with you as you see fit.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this segment of this presentation, and we have one more presentation at the top of the hour that you do not want to miss. Tom Keehan is going to be talking about ownership and accountability, the functional linkages to your enterprise operating system. So a great follow-up to Dr. Ulrich's session on the strategic portfolio management and the real role that strategy and culture plays on enterprise architecture. So look forward to seeing you at the top of the hour, and fill out the feedback sessions, comments if you have any comments to make, and we'll see you back soon.